The Ubersaw, a weapon so powerful and so objectively useful that it completely overshadows everything else in the medic's melee slot. Ubercharge is one of the most impactful mechanics in the entire game, as it lets you ignore damage, push through enemy chokeholds, and turn a hopeless fight into a guaranteed win. So getting 25% of it for free, just by swinging your melee, it sounds like a no-brainer, especially when the Ubersaw's only downside is its 20% slower swing speed, which is completely useless. The Ubersaw doesn't ask you to play any differently, it doesn't ask you to think, it just rewards risky behaviour with barely any punishment, and because of that, it becomes the default. Here's the problem. When that reward is 25% Ubercharge, it starts to mess with your priorities. Suddenly, an out-of-place enemy starts to look more like an Uber pack, with every fight seeming like an opportunity for a free 25%. You stop thinking about positioning, about your teammates, and about staying alive, because all you can dream of is that Uber bar inching upwards. That's how you end up with medics tunnel visioning on an enemy, and simply end up diving into a meat grinder for a single swing. Turns players into adrenaline junkies chasing a dopamine hit, and most of the time, it gets them killed. If you're playing medic, well, the truth is, you shouldn't even need to pull out your melee that often. Your priority is staying alive and keeping your team healthy, and building your Ubercharge safely. The only time you really pull out your melee is in desperation, usually as a Hail Mary when your pocket dies, or against a spy, which more often than not, ends up with you being trick-stabbed or just killed. Another thing to note, which I rarely see people talking about, is that if you hit a disguised spy with the Ubersaw, you don't get any Uber. So unless the spy completely whiffs the stab, you're not getting anything for your trouble. Most spies are going to go for a backstab, it's their entire role, and if they get spotted before they land it, they'll either die to a nearby power class, hit right click and vanish into thin air, or start pulling out every trick stab in the book. And guess what? If any of those happen, you're most likely not getting any Uber. The only time you can gain charge is if the spy remembers they have a gun, which they never do, or they panic and go for a butter knife kill, and only then do you get the 25%. Against any other class, whipping out your melee to try and score that free 25% is just plain reckless. Unless the enemies are literally run into you, the Ubersaw isn't just situational, it's actually useless. And to be fair, that's not just an Ubersaw problem, it's a melee problem in TF2 as a whole, especially on medic. Melee is almost always your last resort, and the best melee weapons in the game, they don't expect you to kill people with them. Look at the power jack or the GRU or the escape plan. All of them are great not because they hit harder, but because they provide some other utility, these three being speed. Gauss Atomizer, the Fists of Steel, or the Back Scratcher all work because their value comes from an additional effect and not because you're swinging it for kills. Why? Because hitting people with melees in TF2 is something you rarely do unless you're playing Demonite or Trollger. So why is the Ubersaw different? Because it doubles down on that by making you believe it is worth it, but most of the time it isn't. Medic's role has always been clear: heal people and keep the team alive. That is your job, and it's what makes Medic one of the most important classes in TF2. And the tool that lets you do that isn't your Ubersaw, it's your Medigun. It's where all your value comes from: healing, Ubercharge, and overheal. And that's why every second you spend not using it is a second that your team is weaker. And when you're swinging your Ubersaw, that's exactly what you're not doing. You're dropping your primary tool just so you can attempt to hit someone with your melee. This is the exact same argument people use against the Mediguns. If you're shooting needles, you're not healing. And the exact same logic can be applied to the Ubersaw. If you're chasing down a spy or any other enemy for a 25% Ubercharge, you're not healing people and are ignoring your primary class role. Now let's talk about overheal. Overheal is insanely powerful. It boosts your teammates' health beyond their normal maximum threshold and lets them soak up way more damage and survive longer in fights. It can absolutely turn the tide of a battle and make your team way harder to take down. But realistically, it only truly matters on one person at a time: your pocket, the player that you're focused on. keeping them topped up as they charge or hold the line. And that is because overheal drains over time, so spreading it around means it will wear off before anyone can get any use out of it. So where am I going with this? It's simple. If Medic's job is to heal and to protect his teammates, then why am I wasting time chasing down risky melee kills for a partial Ubercharge that rarely pays off? Why not use a melee weapon that actually supports healing and survival, the stuff Medic should be about? And that is why I stopped using the Ubersaw, and why I've been running the Amputator instead. Now the reason I use the Amputator is simple. Healing. The Amputator has two upsides, and I'll tackle this one first. Now riddle me this. Can you heal people when you're dead? Obviously not. Staying alive is your #1 priority, and that is where the Amputator quietly does something amazing. With its plus 3 HP a second regenerated, it is really strong. There's not much to say about the extra healing, it does exactly what you need it to do, keep you alive. It is most useful in clutch situations where your pocket goes down, or when you're forced to retreat through spam and fire. That slow, steady regen gives you just enough sustain to survive through things you normally wouldn't. Usually a lingering afterburn or some chip damage while you're escaping. A lot of people will write this off as useless, because yes, you need to have it out in order to get the bonus. But that doesn't mean that it's worthless. 3 health a second adds up in practice, and it can absolutely save your life. Especially since it is enough to survive something like Afterburn, and has personally saved myself many times. But what's really interesting about the Amputator is this stat. Its alternate fire applies a healing effect to all nearby teammates. Like I said earlier, keeping your team alive is your top priority. But the biggest challenge for Medic is that you're just one person, and your medigun beam only connects to one teammate at a time. That means that more often than not, you're juggling multiple injured players all at once, trying to decide who needs your attention the most, and that's where the Amputator really shines. Its healing taunt lets you spread some health around. But the healing isn't as strong as the medi beam, so it's better to heal normally. No, it's the same. Same healing rate, same everything. But what about crit heals? Well, it has that too. The Amputator's taunt lets you restore health to every single teammate around you at the exact same rate as your medigun. And yes, that includes critical heals. This completely changes how you can handle situations where multiple teammates are hurt. Instead of frankly beam juggling and hoping you pick the right person, you can stabilize your entire team in just 4 seconds with one taunt. And that is insane value which most people just ignore. The taunt lasts for 4.2 seconds, and during that time everyone around you get a glowing healing aura that restores their health at the same rate as your medigun. Not just one teammate, everyone nearby. If your whole team is bunched up after a fight, or during a fight, that is a massive swing in survivability. Now yes, while you are taunting, you cannot move, and a lot of people point that to be the deal breaker for the weapon. But honestly, it just means you need to be smart about when and where you use it. Find cover, make sure you aren't in any sniper sightlines and that your back is blocked. Sniper and spy will be your main downfall when using a weapon which makes you stand still. Just don't recklessly spam the taunt and you will be fine, and it can easily help your team either hold a position or support their push forward. And I mentioned overheal earlier because there's another weakness to the Amputator which people seem to point out and say is another deal breaker, and that is that it doesn't deal overheal healing. It can only heal their base HP. But like I said, overheal goes down over time, and if you need to heal multiple people, you're not going to be able to overheal all of them. If you do, you're wasting your time, and most of them can most likely die, or could have went and got health by themselves. With the Amputator, all you need to do is right click, and you can heal up your entire team to max HP, and then switch back to your medigun to start overhealing. All it does is speed up what you're already doing, and it's really useful. So long as you play well, you can avoid its supposed downsides. And in return, you can get a game-changing area of effect healing. And finally, the last complaint that people have with this weapon is its actual downside, 20% less damage. And unlike most of the other melee options, this is an actual drawback. It brings your swing down to just 52 damage, which means killing a spy, who you are most likely to engage in melee combat with, now takes 3 hits instead of 2. And of course, people love to claim that this kills the weapon. But let's think about it for just a second. 2 of the most popular spy knives, the kunai and the big earner, already lower the spy's maximum HP, which means you can still 2-shot them with the Amputator. And against a regular spy, yeah, it's 3 hits, but that's not even bad because of a little thing called random crits. Spy has 125 HP, and with critical hits dealing 3 times damage, even with the Amputator's damage penalty, you will still one-shot them with 150. So realistically, the downside isn't as devastating as people make it out to be. Because when does Medic not random crit? So how should you actually use the Amputator to make the most of it? First, use the group heal smartly. No, it doesn't overheal, but that is not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. The Amputator's taunt lets you top up the entire team in just a few seconds, which is far more efficient than using the Medibeam. Second, don't spam the taunt, because first of all, it builds Uber very slowly, and yes, you are locked into place while you're doing the taunt, which makes you very vulnerable. If you spam the taunt till every second you can, you're just going to be really weak, building Uber slowly, and most likely die the second someone comes over. The key is timing. Use it when you need to stabilize multiple teammates at once, or when you're looking to hold a choke and can safely position yourself behind cover. In those situations, the value it provides is massive and irreplaceable. So I've covered why the Amputator is such a strong pick for Medic, but let's talk about what weapons you should pair it with. For your primary, I'm actually not going to recommend the Overdose for the first time ever. Usually I'd die on a hill about how its movement speed is helpful, but since the Amputator and the Overdose need you to pull them out for their upsides, and their upsides really encourage you to use it while retreating, since you can't exactly pull both out at the same time, the overlap between the weapons makes them redundant. The Blutsauger is even more useless than normal, since the Amputator gives you passive health regen by holding it, so the Blutsauger's health on hit is not useful here. And the stock needle gun is the stock needle gun. So naturally, the best and only option is of course the crossbow, for its long-range healing and quick bursts on a single target. For the mediguns, any of them can work well, but I'd advise against using the quick fix, since the quick fix's strength relies on how quickly it can heal a single target, and then move on to the next one, and then the next one. Since the Amputator heals multiple people at once, using the quick fix means you're kind of stepping on your own toes. One thing to keep in mind is that the Amputator's group heal builds Ubercharge much more slowly than the Medigun beam. If you heavily rely on the healing taunt, you might find that your Uber taking a hit, and that is where the Mediguns like the Kritzkrieg or the Vaccinator come into play. They build Uber faster or provide different benefits that can offset the slower Uber gain. But of course, the final choice is always yours, and since the setup depends on your personal playstyle and the team needs, just pick what you want. So yes, I've stopped using the Ubersaw, and honestly, I don't miss it. The Amputator brings a completely different dynamic to playing Medic, one that actually reinforces what the class is meant to do. It rewards awareness, smart positioning, and team-focused play, instead of tunnel visioning for risky hits. It's not perfect, because no weapon is, but the risks it carries are easy to manage if you play carefully, and the payoff is absolutely worth it to me. So if you're tired of the same old melee meta, or you want to make Medic feel fresh again, why not give the Amputator a try? Did I get anything wrong? Disagree with my opinions? Think I missed something? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video or found it interesting, consider giving it a like, sharing it, and possibly even subscribing. And thank you for getting to the end.